Allow me to introduce our panelists this morning who are with us here to take us through this particular discussion and a raft of other issues here on This Is a Point. We have with us Dr. James Nyikal, who is the Member of Parliament from Seme, and also we have with us Senator Samuel Poghisio, who is the Senator from West Pokot. We have with us also Dr. Seme Eseli, who is a Member of Parliament from Tongaren, also he is General Secretary of Ford Kenya. And for a long time we've not seen his face, but he's here with us this morning, Ambassador Chirau Ali Mwakwere. Jibaba. Good to see you this morning and welcome to This Is a Point. And a lot has been, of course, happening. And maybe you've just been sitting at the corner and wondering how or where the tangent of this country is taking us. What is the trajectory so far? We'll hear from you this morning. But from Dr. Nyikal, just freshly also from Geneva, what was happening in Geneva? Maybe you can give us a highlight.
Well, basically, the Geneva was the World Health Assembly that occurs every year, where ministers from all countries all over the world meet to discuss health issues. And basically, the main theme of the Geneva conference this year of World Health Assembly was universal health care.
Universal health care.
Where the main focus is to ensure that citizens of all nations can receive health care of acceptable standards and without spending so much as to push them into poverty. So the conference was looking, the assembly was looking at all aspects of this, starting with from primary health care, which is basically to make healthcare at the community level efficient so that you reduce the illnesses, we reduce the number of people that are affected, we reduce severe illnesses by people being treated early so that the total cost of healthcare goes down so that it can be possible for governments to then pay for that cost, so that all citizens can receive health care through various means, such as governments that have enough money can pay for all of it, governments that cannot, and many cannot pay through social health insurance. I think that's basically the main theme that was in the Health Assembly.
All right. All right. Just looking at what has been happening also as far as corruption is concerned, because that is the main basis. We shall not tire. We can talk a good game about this until something really happens, right? Because it seems also as Kenyans, we're becoming insensitized to corruption so far, because we have all these stories that we are inundated with through mass media, until it seems our conscience is seared that, yeah, it is part of our lifestyle, that we should now embrace it. But from your point of view, looking at what is happening right now with the NYS, NCPB, the youth scandal, and a raft of other issues, we're always, as I say, waiting the other shoe to drop as far as corruption is concerned. What is your take, Dr. Nyikal?
We've talked about this until, as a country, I'm really getting tired of it. The main thing I see myself is that there is an ethos of corruption in this country. It's apparent that as much as we talk, corruption has been accepted at every level in the country. You don't see people getting extremely agitated about corruption. People talk about it. We've never even had any national demonstration, call for a huge national demonstration against corruption. People who have been mentioned in mega scandals, or who have even been taken to court, even if not proved, and the investigation never seem to get anywhere. You see them getting elected to big positions. That is what worries me most. That people who have been mentioned, people who have been taken to court, even if not proved, and as I said, we never seem to prove anything about this mega scandal, and it brings to question the institutions that are charged with this, the public prosecution, the EACC, the police department. How is it that we really never have enough evidence? And so that those people walk around enjoying their wealth, going around in this, are even influencing how elections, how people are elected, how elections go on, corrupting the electorate and getting elected. So with the impression that you get that it's okay, and I want so on a matatu that you are only corrupt if you are caught. It is not corruption if you are not caught. If you are not caught. And if you have institutions that don't catch anybody, then you will really never get anywhere. I've advocated in the fact that we should have really very severe sanctions for corruption. Me, I've even said as serious as capital punishment, but many people tend to think that that is really not proper. I think we have laws. I know we have laws that even provide for getting assets, recovery of assets. But you never really get to see anybody whose assets have been recovered. There have been a few cases here and there, but really nothing much. And I just want to say one thing, maybe as we pass it on to the others. My father, who is now over 90 and old and blind, once told me that the only person that actually can stop corruption in the country is the president.
Is the president.
If his argument was, if even in the cabinet one person was really very active against corruption and the others are not, nothing happens. Even if you go in the departments and there is one or two people who really want to fight corruption and the others are not, and nothing happens to them, then nothing will happen. But the one person whose effect will be felt everywhere is the president.
The president will expressly argue that we have institutions to combat corruption, and these institutions are expected to work. So he will also pass the baton to the institutions. Let's hear from Senator Poghisio.
Oh, thank you very much, Debarl and my colleagues. Good morning. First of all, let me agree with the MP for Seme, because he's been in the public sector and he knows all these things. He probably has seen the face of corruption somewhere. My take on this is that we need to seriously get away from lamenting and always everybody saying we don't know what to do, and yet we actually know what to do. Can we discuss what are the weaknesses in the system and can we correct them? Can we, at least for once, all agree that if the system is not able to investigate anyone, catch anyone, prosecute anyone, let's correct the system. Let's work on that system together and get a system that's tight enough. We're not the only country in the world. In many parts of the world today, you can see corruption openly. And you can see how people are treated when they are caught with corruption-related resources. When you say that the highest office, which is the presidency, also relies on other institutions, yeah, it is true. But there is no institution higher than that. It's the highest. It's the one there where the buck stops. So we want to support the president. We want to help the president in any way we can by still giving information, but at the same time, the buck stops there and the responsibility. I think the worst thing, Debarl, is when the investigation comes close to home, close to the powers, and it so happens that it is your senior officers, or it's your family, or it is all these things, then it becomes difficult. And yet we must be able to break that. So I'd like to see the president and all those in charge tell everybody, like they've said, carry your own cross, and truly allow people to carry their own crosses.
Thank you. Right, let's say from Dr. Eseli, this is maybe the umpteenth time that we are really talking about corruption and the president taking action. Could now this be the ultimate moment where every Kenyan is waiting to see how the executive will act? Yeah, in light of all these scandals that have come to the fore right now, will it just be business as usual? Then, of course, other news will take over from, the corruption and the scandals that we do have right now, and then it will taper off.
I think corruption in Kenya dates from independence. At independence, Kenya sired two terrible twins, corruption and tribalism. The twins eventually begot impunity. Now these have become of age, and they are rampaging the country because we've actually accepted that to be normal. You remember one time it said that the late former president of Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta, asked Bildad Kagia, what have you done with your life? What did he mean? Is it that Bildad Kagia had not stolen anything and therefore the president was castigating him? So we planted the seed right from independence. Then there was a time when it was allowed that now public officers can do business with government. That really brought the disease now closer and made it very cancerous. Only that it was a slow cancer and people didn't recognize it as a cancer. But now it is bad and malignant. Corruption in Kenya, I would say, starts at budget making. It starts at budget making. I've been in that parliament now for a while, but under the new constitution, parliament is a budget making organ. And you really find that that's the time funny things are put in, costing astronomical amounts. So I would urge the president to start with that budget, to look at that budget seriously, because that is where the corruption comes. Because has anybody ever explained why it costs so much to build a road in Kenya, to build a tarmac road? Those are the things that we need to look at. Because right now we've actually misled the young people. You hear young people saying that, why go to school? I'll get rich, then buy the degree and I'll be appointed a state officer, or I'll win an election and become a state officer. So why go to school? So we are actually messing up our own children by what we are doing in this country, because the children have got no sense of direction, because there's no shame. There's no shame in stealing public resources anymore, because people somehow don't seem to realize what public resources means, or where the government gets the resources in the first place. They get it from the Mwananchi. They get it from Mwananchi's taxes. If it's a loan they have taken, it's Mwananchi who will pay that money. But somehow people have been unable to tie up the two and realize that any theft is actually their money that's being stolen. Instead, they glorify that person. They say, leave our thief alone, that's our thief. Yeah. It's dangerous. That psyche is bad. And like we said, the institutions, you said that President might say the institutions are there to actually stem corruption. But these are just like cats that have never caught any rat. In fact, at the most, they occasionally bring in a cockroach. But they've never caught any rats. I mean, these institutions need a complete overhaul. I know the president has tried to overhaul them, but see, you can overhaul the leadership of the institution. But if you've left the rot still there, because most of this corruption is not the top leader of, say, ESCC, yes, or DCI who is doing it. It's the officers in charge. Such that, and I've said this on this station before, organizations like ESCC, I think Kenyans over-rely on such an organization. In countries where people set up specific bodies to tackle corruption in the line of ESCC, they have never worked. In fact, they have become gatekeepers of corruption. And at the worst, they have been used by the state to witch hunt their enemies. When you set up such organizations like ESCC, the thing to do is to strengthen DCI, let them do their work. Because and remember the history of setting up ESCC was when retired President Moi was in a corner by international donors, and to convince them that he was fighting corruption, he formed CASA under Harun Mwau, and everybody laughed and said, now how is Harun Mwau going to stem corruption? So it's something that we need to do. I know Right Honorable former Prime Minister is trying to give the president courage to fight this corruption by appearing to also own it and telling Kenyans to be patient. But I would advise him to just keep off. He's trying to wear a cloth that is not his. It will dirty him for no reason. Because the corruption that's going on right now is so extreme that the only person who can actually stem it now is the president himself. And it's not about catching small fish here, who stole 10 million here, who stole 2 million here. The big fish, there are people who have stolen billions, and they are not touchable. They're not touchable. He should start from there. He knows them. Right. He knows them.
Right. We have also a very beautiful article that was written by Ken Opalo in Saturday Standard. And there we have it, President NYS come, a sign of what is yet to come. And tucked away, this was what he said. He said that all told, the buck stops with the political leadership and Parliament and State House. There is no running away from this fact. To ensure that machinery of graft is efficient, the appointments have been primarily ethnic driven. If you make 10 appointments, only 1 or 2 will be outside the ethnic metrics of the appointing authority. In the circumstances, we have had in place not just a bandit economy, but successive bandit governments. From the very start, the government has been meant and designed to be felonious. Of course, and it continues on and on and on. Let's hear from Chirau Ali Mwakwere, and good to see you. Good morning. So you've been sitting back and looking at what is happening currently as far as corruption is concerned. What is your take? You've been also in government over the years. Are we batting our heads on the wall as far as fighting corruption is concerned?
First and foremost, let me thank you for inviting me to participate this morning in this debate. I decided to lie low, not to appear in public, just to mind my own businesses. But then I said, if I did so without coming out to let the nation know what I have observed from without, as compared to what I observed when I was within, I have the following to say. Corruption takes root and grows to the magnitude that has reached in our country when the economy is collapsing. Corruption is a symptom of a collapsing economy and early stages of a failed state. It reaches a time when everybody wakes up to the danger of a failed state, and that's where we are. We are at this stage, but then we are approaching it in some cases correctly, but in many cases wrongly. We tend to personalize corruption. Corruption refers to these illegal activities all over the country, even in the private sector. So the people who should participate in ensuring that Kenya is not corrupt and help to grow the economy is not the president. Bring another president and the situation will be the same. It could be worse. It is the presidency. And by the presidency, I'm referring to 4 areas of concern. 1, the executive. 2, the legislature. 3, the judiciary. And 4, the masses. All those are under the president, and that is the presidency. We are all supposed to play our part to ensure that we stop corrupt practices at all those levels. Now, when I say corruption symbolizes a collapsing economy, I can give you an example or examples of other countries in the world. Let's start from Africa here. The economy of Nigeria was collapsing. It was almost becoming a failed state. Those were the days when you used to get emails from Nigerians telling you that they've inherited billions from their grandfathers whom they never saw. Those are the days when drug peddlers were arrested all over the world, including here in Kenya. Those were the days when Nigerians will tell you that they can convert $100 note to $1 million overnight. Those were symptoms of a failing state. But then they improved their economy. You rarely see Nigerians arrested selling drugs all over the world. Emails of Nigerians telling people that they inherited billions from their great-grandfathers whom they never saw are hardly seen or read these days. These are the days when Nigerians don't go around the world telling people that they can convert $100 note to $1 billion. Why? Their economy has improved. Everyone wants to make wealth in a clean manner. But when the economy is failing, people want to cut corners and even steal from the state. This is true. This has happened in other countries. But we need to do something to jumpstart the economy. And I tell you what Nigeria benefited from. I'm not a Nigerian. Maybe some will disagree with me, but that's my observation from outside. One, communication, which you have also done here. Two, transportation, which you have also done here. And three, transaction of money in a tension-free atmosphere. We have also done here.
Thank you.
But all those activities reach a plateau.
Right, thank you.
And when they reach a plateau, unless you do something, then you're in trouble.
Let's just hear from Dr. Nyikal, first of all, because it seems that we can look at the intrigues of NYS scandal. There is one Monica Canary who owns Occasions and Days Limited. She received 15 million shillings, 306,689 on the morning of December 20th, 2016, in what has now been flagged down as one of the questionable payments made by NYS. We know this money, particular monies, was also wired back because according to a transmission document from the Central Bank of Kenya seen by the Standard and Interbank Settlement ordered by the Ministry of Public Service and Youth through reference number that is given there, the money was deposited into the NIC Bank account operated by Occasions and Days Limited. And on noticing the anomaly, Ms. Canary wrote to the ousted Youth Ministry PS Lilian Omolo on December the 23rd, 2016. We are given to understand that she was informing her of the deposit and asking for a reversal of the funds. It is not clear whether the PS responded, and the PS has declined to comment on this. Of course, we had also her appearing before the Public Accounts Committee. The question is, how can monies of such magnitude be wired to the wrong recipient? Is it a flawed system that we have with IFMIS? Is it people who are actually gaming the system? Were they really wiring this money so that, yes, they could have called Canary and tell her, okay, there's a huge tidy sum of money that has come to your account, but don't be astonished by it. We have a deal that we can make. You can take your cut, we can take our cut. This epitomizes what really happens in the government ministries, because it seems this maybe is an entrenched system that is so backed in the cake of corruption in this country.
You see, this. Let's start with that. I read that story also, and the story ends by the person trying the money should be returned, wire the money back. My take on that is simply that this money went to the wrong person, somebody out of the circle of collusion. Because what really, in my mind, happens why systems fail is if there is perfect collusion, that everybody who is in the system, who is supposed to protect the system, to make sure that nothing goes wrong, if they are all part of it, they all know what is happening, then obviously everybody says it has been passed correctly, it has gone to the correct person, the goods have been received. Even if no goods were received.
Yes.
They probably start by creating fictitious companies. And these fictitious companies actually belong to the people themselves. And then the fictitious companies receive the goods. I mean, not to supply the goods, but actually no goods are supplied. Then the people who are receiving the goods say, we have received the goods, but actually nothing has been received. So the people who are paying, all this evidence can be available, and that is what is I call perfect collusion. All the people in the system are involved. But I myself believe that it must start much higher than the operatives that are doing it. As my colleague Dr. Eseli said, you see, like the NYS, we have now seen it twice. Institutions where these things are going to happen, prior to that, at the budget level, you see huge money is going into them. And then you see good explanations. It starts with the policies that we want to do this, good programs that people are intending. Like now, we are talking of the Big Four. The Big Four may actually now be used as the pillar of corruption. Because all the money that are going to the big four, even in parliament, have been in parliament, it looks, we want to do this, we want to do this in health, we want to do this in infrastructure, we want to do this infrastructure. Big projects, so monies go there. So they are passed that the monies are going. But when they reach there, then you start seeing this collusion where the people who start the projects don't exist, the people who bid don't exist, the people who supply don't exist, the people who receive don't exist. And so it is perfect collusion. I want to give you an old example when we have Goldenberg, when somebody said that the gold that we were selling out, if it is true it was coming from Kenya, we should have gold mines that are publicly known with gold dust that will be with a mountain so big that you can see it from Kericho in Nairobi. If you know the gold dust that is now, if you go to South Africa, where they mine, there's this dust that is brought out and it's a huge dust mountain of dust. Now, if that happens and you can't see it, then obviously there's perfect collusion. There's also something in this country that there are people who are so wealthy, but you don't know the business they do. At least in some places, you know, so and so owns this building, so and so owns these hotels, so and so owns this. You can see that. But there are certainly people who are so rich. Now, we talk of systems. When I was permanent secretary, one of the things I said is that as a permanent secretary, one should not read about corruption in your ministry from the papers. And then you can say, I don't know. Because within the system, there is an internal audit department. There's a department that is checking these monies as they pass through. Now, as that money was passing through and going to this canary, somebody should have picked it. Worse still, once the PS is notified, I mean, that should be a big alarm that is asking, how did it happen that such a huge money went into some account? What was it paying for? And you don't see. So the reason why we don't never seem to catch anybody is because there is perfect collusion. And I dare say this collusion may even go outside the institution, even to the institutions that investigate, even to the institutions that prosecute. Because how can it be that nobody ever gets really caught and taken to court? And if they go to court, there's no evidence. Where should the evidence come from? Because unless those systems really work, unless we leave this collusion. And let me just end with one point. I said corruption has become our national ethos. It is like part of us. In the media today, one of the papers, there's a report of a school where kids have gone on strike because the headmaster is refusing to support cheating in exams. What does that tell us? Are we not? And before that, there was also a report that came that there is evidence that some people are trying to cheat in the coming exam, and the chairman of the examination council was saying it will not happen. And then we hear these students have now gone on strike. There is something going on, and these students cannot be just acting on their own. There must be something going on in other schools that is already happening.
Thank you.
People are colluding.
Right, thank you. Let's say from...
But the point is,
yes,
if children have accepted cheating so much that they can go on strike to be allowed to cheat and say it publicly, and all the officials are there, and the children are saying, we are going on strike because we have been, the headmaster is trying to stop us from cheating.
all right.
Where have we reached?
This is the question I was asking about the conscience of a nation. As it becomes so seared that we can't tell right from wrong. Let's hear from Honorable Poghisio.
Yeah, thank you. Although that school is actually in my county.
It is in your county.
So Ortum Boys
Yes.
Secondary School. The main reason why they are complaining is actually about the move of the headmasters. Because a new headmaster had come in, and there's a lot of politics, so we want to forget about that. Of course, the school has also suffered from a results cancellation, so we would want to get to the bottom of that transfer. My take on the other matter, which we must actually concentrate our efforts on, which is corruption, is that Kenya should set its own standard. We should set a level where we say this is now beyond bearing. We can't bear this anymore. And that means taking drastic action. For example, all the mega projects, which are given to international companies, for example, all of them somehow are loaded with corruption already. All of them, most of them have got ways in which they can corrupt the officials. And if you catch people like that, why don't we expose them? Why don't we make sure that all these mega projects, which cost more than is necessary, are either stopped, suspended, or even the people taken to task? We need to start thinking about penalties. We need to start thinking about making it tough to steal and to steal. It looks easier now than ever. It looks like it's a walk in the park. You get appointed to a position, and 3 years, it's like you have done a business worth billions in 3 years, and you're just an official of government. So I want to remind us that if you really discover there is something in an area like National Youth Service or NCPB, the officials who have been there a long time, those are the people who already mastered this thing. So why do you reappoint people to the same positions where things have been stolen from? I think that immediate action should be taken so that the people who have been there for a long time, let's take, for example, a cabinet or a PS position. Reappointing somebody to that position, again, after an issue has come out of that position, it means that you're giving that person a chance to continue practicing what he has been practicing. I have mentioned here before about a lifestyle audit, and nobody, of course, takes it seriously. You know, all of us, we know each other. I know Dr. Nyikal when he came into Parliament. If 3 years later he's owning a helicopter or a chopper, do I need to be asked who is corrupt? Really, do I need to explain how? Because I can ask him. You and I know the salaries we get. Yes, I know the businesses, if there is any. But how come all of a sudden you're owning this huge building? You're owning all this fleet of vehicles. You're owning... Lifestyle audit is not difficult. Even a village, I can tell you, from the counties, for example, where we have cascaded this thing called corruption. Corruption in the counties. People just want to say, just give me a job in the county. And all of a sudden, 3 years later, 4 years later, these are billionaires, these are millionaires. So what do we do as a country? Let's have a national debate on this issue. Let's not just debate, but a conversation on this issue. And I'll tell you this, we're having the National Prayer Breakfast.
Yes.
For example, on Thursday this week. And the national conversation the day before, we're going to discuss about then how do we now live as a country? What is this? What can we do to remove ourselves from this shame? And finally, let me say, shaming is another way of dealing. It's in the African tradition, shaming, the family name. If we shame people, maybe somebody can be conscious and begin to think my family is going to suffer for it. Thank you.
Right. Do we need a national debate? Do you think we need a national conversation on this, Dr. Eseli?
Well, this debate has been on for donkey years from independence. We've talked about corruption.
Yeah.
So what new national debate do we want?
Do we begin by calling it a national disaster?
Yes, it's a national disaster. In fact, I usually say Kenya is no longer a democracy. Kenya is now a lootocracy. The more you loot, the higher you rise. So it's no longer a democracy. So if it's a conversation about that, to see how people can survive in a lootocracy, then let's have that conversation. But as I said earlier, the institutions that have been tasked with reining in this corruption and all those misdeeds, those are things like EACC, DCI, and all anti-banking fraud unit and all that. Those are just like cats that have never brought in a rat. They have never caught any rat. They catch an occasional cockroach and go to town about it. But otherwise, they don't catch any rats at all, because some of them have become tools of the state, in the sense that if there is any political score to settle, they are used to do that. That's when you find organizations like EACC. But otherwise, like the issue of Madam Canary, how did IFMIS transmit this money to her? Because it's very clear in the IFMIS who procured, who inspected, who then okayed the payment. There's a footprint they can follow. So this means the collusion is right from IFMIS itself, the IFMIS office. This NIA scandal, when it first started, to me this is not a new scandal, it's a continuation of the other one. It's something to do with the IFMIS office. And I remember I was in the Public Accounts Committee when we were investigating the first scandal. And it was very clear that there was a problem at IFMIS. We even asked the Auditor General to audit IFMIS. Is it value for money? But then we found that actually IFMIS itself has got nothing wrong. It's the people manning it. As they say with computers, garbage in, garbage out. So the people manning it are the ones who are manipulating it to do all these things. But the biggest problem that we have, and I said this before, is tribalism and corruption. You will always find where one community is employed in a particular place, they are the majority there, then they collude. That's when you start finding mega corruption. Actually, go to all these institutions that we are talking about mega corruption. You'll find a dominance of one community or the other. Usually, that abets corruption. Once you have, because when you have, like the way we are mixed here on this panel today, it will be difficult for us to collude and do any corruption. But when you find where I am and we are all Bukusu or all Luya, it will be very easy for me to do that. And this is something that Kenyans don't want to face. One of the drivers of corruption in this country is tribalism. It's one of the biggest drivers of corruption in this country. And that is also the biggest driver of impunity. So impunity is a result of that loss of what you call good ethos in the country. In the sense that, for example, people feel nothing by jumping the queue. You see a queue and you jump it. And you feel nothing.
Yes.
You know, you are in traffic, somebody just decides to overtake on the wrong side, and they go. And they get away with it. So we have actually lost it completely. So if it's a question of having a conversation, I think we need to go back to Independence Day and say, this is the day we got independence. When did the rain start beating us? You remember I gave you the example of Jomo Kenyatta telling Bildad Kaya, I gave you positions, what have you done with it for yourself? What seed was he planting? What seed was he planting? This is where the problem is.
And isn't that a deja vu of what also President Kenyatta was saying during the State House Summit? Yeah, that Mr. Wako.
Yes.
Yeah, I gave you this job.
Yes.
You've actually given me the names. I've sent away some cabinet secretaries, right? But I'm still waiting for
some of those,
the evidence.
Remember, that list of shame, again, EACC was being used to settle some political scores. Some names were included in that list, which should not have been there, you know? And actually, so organizations like those, we as a nation, we need to come clean on this and agree that we've messed up as a people, and we have to sit down and say no more. But to say no more, we first must take these people who have brought this country to its knees, take them to jail, and recover that wealth back to the national coffers. That will teach such a big lesson that people will not do it again. Otherwise, as Dr. Nyikal says, even kids in school, they don't see the need to work hard. They want to steal exams, you know? And they'll tell you, but you are telling me nisome kwa bidii. Nisome kwa bidii ndio nifanye nini? Wewe umesoma huko na nini? You know? They say, I'll hustle, I'm a sufferer, I'm a hustler, I will hustle my way, I'll make my money. If it's degrees, I'll buy the degrees, and after I've bought the degrees, I'll be appointed as state officer, or I'll be elected as state officer. That is the kind of thing we've done to Kenyans. So we've set our kids on a dangerous path. Yes.
All right, and this is a crunch time for President Uhuru Kenyatta to act decisively, especially on matters of corruption. We're eagerly waiting to see what he will do. As I mentioned, we're keeping our eyes peeled on it. As you've mentioned, yes, that is a mantra that is ongoing, especially with the young people, Dr. Ambassador Mwakwere. The question will be again, why should I wake up early in the morning to come to the studios here in the wee hours of the morning and you work honestly, yet you see the corrupt leaders or some corrupt officials or even some of the masses of the youth of Kenya that we have in this country who are unemployed. Why should they work hard? As Dr. Eseli is asking, why should I work hard if money can actually just be wired to my account just like that? You know, at the snap of a finger, I have 15 million. I'm rich. I've not worked for it. It is in my account. Right? Why should I work? Where is the ethos that he's talking about? Where is the spirit of how hard-working Kenyans, as is scapulated, of course, even from the national anthem? Yeah.
I totally agree with my colleagues' views. I fully agree with Dr. Eseli's analysis. But I'll go back to the same issue of the economy, because here we have malaria and mosquitoes. What we're doing is we're trying to treat malaria. But we'll keep on treating. In fact, the numbers of the people infected will even increase. Reason, the mosquito is still there. So to curb and stop corruption and give Kenya another approach towards development, we have to ensure that we eliminate the mosquito. Mm-hmm. Now, what is the mosquito? The mosquito is simply weak economy. That weak economy, compounded by tribalism, encourages corrupt practices. And on top of that, our own systems of fighting corruption do not really tackle the real problem. We use corruption as a means of settling political differences. Dr. Eseli mentioned that, but I've got to have a living example. Mm-hmm. Myself, I resigned from government because they insulted me. In the list of shame, 2015, my name, together with others, was tabled in Parliament. Mm-hmm. I had to step aside for 3 months. In fact, went to 4 months. When I went to anti-corruption, they asked me, so why did you steal? There was nothing. They even confessed that the name was added elsewhere. That was not in the original list. And they wrote a letter to me. We found no wrongdoing on your part. Treat this matter as closed. What an insult. Fighting corruption, not the real corruption that we're experiencing, but trying to settle political scores using government institutions. Mm-hmm. We are still in that position. Mm-hmm. And unless we take it seriously and take action in the form of, some parts have already been done, identifying the corrupt, and you start from the top, because you are pruning, and pruning starts from the top, not from down. You're wasting time. 2, having identified these people, mm-hmm. take them to Nurdin's organizations, mm-hmm. and then take them to court. So there are 3 stages: identifying them, getting them investigated, take them to court. Now, that is where the circle of corruption again starts, because at a certain stage, as Dr. Nyikal said, somebody does not take action, and it brings in the question of the presidency, which includes those 4 sectors that I mentioned: the executive, mm-hmm. the legislature, the judiciary, and we ourselves, including the private sector. Kenyans are not serious. We're not fighting corruption. We're doing fragmented initiatives which do not add up to fighting corruption. Even what we are doing now, there are some areas which have done very well. For example, the big 4 will definitely improve our economy, mm-hmm. but not in the short run. I can tell you, not even medium run, term, yes. in the long run. And that's not good enough even for now. Some yes. other actions must be taken. It is like the days of our early days of independence. We talked of fighting 3 enemies: poverty, ignorance, and disease. Mm-hmm. But that agenda continues up to now. interventions have been made and can be observed. So the big four are important. They will create jobs, even more than what has been projected. But that is not in the immediate stage. We've got to fight corruption. Otherwise, even in the long run, those big four will not be achieved. So how do we fight corruption? My brothers, we're not discovering corruption here. Interventions have been done elsewhere. Identify these people, prosecute them, let them be jailed with stiff sentences to be exemplary to the others. 2, the executive has got to look into the system. If contributed this corruption, mega corruption, no doubt about it. It's a totally useless tool for the management of finances in government institutions. If time permitted, I would even analyze and tell you why it is totally useless. It is actually encouraging corruption. It is encouraging corruption. Kickstart the economy, have ideas on how this can be done. The forum here is discussing corruption as we're experiencing it now, the billions that are being stolen. Yes, that has been observed. But my brothers and sisters, Kenya is in a very weak economic state. Go to the rural areas where I've been spending all this time since I got out of government. I resigned because they accused me of being corrupt, just to cover up the very corrupt. And then they write a letter to me to say, we found no wrongdoing on your part. Treat this matter as closed. Closed for what? You embarrassed me internationally. That is Kenya's way of fighting corruption. Deplorable, unacceptable. And we've got to change. So this change comes from those 4 levels of the presidency. The executive, the judiciary, the legislature is also corrupt.
Right. But how would we be talking about taking them, they should be prosecuted and given severe punishment, taken to the slummers? We want to know, because yes, we've seen those who have been prosecuted. They'll go for the principal secretaries, them that appear. We had Peter Mangiti with the previous NYS scandal as well. He was acquitted. Those are the people that we'll know they will go for. Who are the people who are behind these cartels? Right? Who are the people who are actually, having this shadowy, shadow companies that we are not aware of, the faces? Can we put? Because we know this is really, as I mentioned, so backed in this cake within the government.
Tribal clusters.
Yeah, tribal clusters within government, and we don't know the faces because they have a blessing of the upper reaches of government. Why isn't anyone really coming to the fore and just let it all hang out and say so and so, so that we know at least we have a list of shame, and we know this is a person who has been looting from the NYS. This is a person who has been looting from the Eurobond. This is a person who has been looting from the national housing scandal. This is a person, and the list goes on. It is frustratingly long.
You won't believe it. The masses know who are corrupt. That I said there are 4 levels. The masses know who are corrupt. They are ready to name them, but they are insecure.
They're insecure. Right.
They feel totally insecure.
Thank you.
Let me take it at the presidency level. I like his use of the term presidency. Let me repeat. The one person who can call most people to account right now in this country, including even parliament, is actually the president. Let's look at the appointment process of all these senior people. It actually, even those who are vetted in parliament, if you have the majority in parliament, then it means you actually can control even the vetting of the people who are appointed.
Yes.
And in most cases, it's not just one name that is appointed. Sometimes you give 2, 3 names and then they are picked. So in the end, that is the most powerful office in the country and in this country at this time with the majority in parliament. If that office was keen to call everybody to book, something will happen. When you take it at the top, like when you get to the PS, the minister level, and leave it there, the system below remains. And if you bring just another person the same, and my view is there is no commitment to actually cleaning the system from the top to the bottom. All these 3 all the institutions that can deal with corruption, the presidency or the executive can call them and say, I want results. Is that we can never investigate and get to the bottom of anything, but we know that money was lost and it cannot be lost unless people take it. It must go somewhere. We must know. Follow up to those levels who are involved in this. So me, I said there's collusion starting at the top, and what we are doing is that. And let me say, we used to talk of, at independence, we talk of the three: ignorance, poverty, and disease. To me, what is now killing this country, as Honorable Eseli said, is tribalism and corruption. Unless something is done about that, all these great things we are saying, the big four for our development may actually become the big pillars of corruption. Because you put a lot of money there, and if the systems are such that they condone corruption, then that is where the corruption will go. So in my view, there must be commitment at the top. Sometimes action must be taken. A few innocent people may suffer. But what can you do?
Thank you. What can we do?
Right. We must say action is taken at the top, and those who have been found culpable must not enjoy the fruits of their corruption.
Let's bring it to a close. Let's hear from...
I'm not talking, let me tell you, I'm not talking about a national conversation which is just for the sake of conversing. I'm thinking if we must transit to the big four, we should ask ourselves, are we going there the way we are now, or we are going there in a very revised manner, having discussed exactly what has gone wrong with the system? Because the system, including IFMIS, must be corrected. The investigatory systems in this country, those are the places where the weaknesses are.
Corrected from what? Because we had this particular conversation of when we had the NOS season 1, so to speak, and the people brought to bear the issue of ISMIS. So we had also the cabinet secretary coming and saying, of course, the integrity of ISMIS itself is up to scratch. So what are we correcting?
We are not correcting. What we want to do, Debarl, is that we must now involve everybody, that we are not going to transit into this new system unless, because what's the point of talking about a big four? How big can it be when it's going to be full of corruption? It's going to be to diminish our economy and everything. We must start now. And the issues we're talking about is we've not really talked about it. We have not really discussed these things. You know, the media has done their part. The media continues to keep this thing on the front pages. They continue to be the conscience of society. And we feel proud about the media. But take it from there then. How come now we don't take this? I'm not so sure. I don't know who reads the headlines. If the president and all the people in charge read these headlines, it should preoccupy them. They should be calling groups of people to talk about this thing. Where are we going with this nation? And this is from President Kenyatta. This is his legacy period. And I'm hoping that legacy is on top of the agenda. And if it is legacy, you must put your foot down on the matters corruption. The architects of the NYS saga are still there. The very architects from the beginning. And I don't know when it started. We may have seen the fruit of it, but the roots are still there. This NCPP is NCPP. Look at that. We've complained about it as farmers ourselves. We've talked about the corruption there, but nobody will take action until something goes wrong. So are we going to move on to transit to the big four, which everybody seems to support, not knowing that the big four would then take us far or kill this economy? Right. So I hope that the big four we will begin. I'm not talking about a discussion in the sense of a theory. I'm thinking we must begin to have a consensus on where this country is going.
Thank you.
From now henceforth.
Right, and of course we have some breaking news, as you can see on the screen there, that yes, we're still on the issue of corruption, and that is the latest development. At least 20 suspects have been arrested as DPP orders prosecution of those named in NYS probe after independently reviewing files. And one of them also is the Director General of the National Youth Service, that is Richard Dubai. And of course, many of them as well, 20 suspects. This is a developing story. This is the latest information coming to hand right now in our newsroom this morning. At least 20 suspects have been arrested as DPP orders prosecution of those named in NYS probe after independently reviewing files. So we're eagerly waiting to see who are the 20 suspects. We're still talking about the small fishes, or fish I should say, and the big fish who are not really, of course, gotten into that particular net So who are behind also these cartels? We want to know as far as this probing is concerned. This is a developing story, and of course we shall be giving you the lowdowns of them, or of this story, as far as fresh revelations and fresh insights really come to the fore as well. So we continue. I think this is a good development as far as we're talking. Let's hear from you, Dr. Eseli.
If you recall 2002, after the 2002 elections, Kenyans were so fired up that they were actually arresting policemen who were taking bribes on the roads. So the Kenyan does not condone corruption.
Yes.
The Mwananchi is against it. The Mwananchi knows that it's hurting the economy. But that was 16 years ago. I don't know how many of them now are willing to do the same arrests that they did that time, especially now with the impunity that's there, especially in the police force itself. When you try to arrest them, they might just shoot you because they have gone rogue, you know, they have gone completely rogue. Another new front for corruption is the IT sector.
IT sector.
Because there's this feeling that when you want to automate and when you want to automate systems and things like those, the vendors of these things are charging astronomical amounts of money that are not really related to what this system is going to deliver. So these are the areas that we need to look at. But you asked who are the owners of this corruption, who are the cartels? And I think I had given you an answer. It starts at budget making.
Budget making?
Yes. So look at that budget. When you look at it critically is when you will see where the money is hidden. And where that money is hidden is where the corruption will be. Because you roughly can tell what something should cost. But if you are seeing on that budget, something is costing way beyond what you know it should cost, that should should raise your attention. And even let's make it simple. Why don't we just reevaluate our roads, the ones that have been constructed, reevaluate our railways, and see were the costs justified? Were the costs, those roads, was that the correct cost? That railway, was that the correct cost?
The dams, whatever.
The dams, was that the correct cost?
Right.
That will tell you, getting these people is not difficult. We just need the political will.
The political will.
The political will get them. But what we need to guard against, what Honorable Mwakwere said, using the fight against corruption to settle political scores.
Right.
We need to be very careful about that because that's a form of McCarthyism, you know. You start
Senator Joseph McCarthy.
Because
Yes.
because I don't like Debarl, so I find a reason to include him, that he received some money from NYS, you know.
This is the McCarthyism that Ambassador Mwakwere is talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
We should be careful about
yes.
McCarthyism and people trying to settle their own differences using the fight against corruption.
All right. All right. Information coming to hand right now. Of course, as you can see on the screen, a breaking news that we are receiving this morning, that we have so far 23 suspects who have been arrested in light of the NYS scandal so far. The DPP is expected to make 43 arrests, I should say, this morning. And of course, we want also to ask that particular question that we had also with Kenya Power. We had 20 suspects who have been shown the door, heads rolled, I think, last week. So why should they be, shown the door and not arrested?
Yeah.
Right? We want them arrested as well. Dr. Eseli, or let's hear from Mwakwere. So if we are arresting from NYS, we should arrest also from Kenya Power as well.
That's right.
Yeah. So even the DPP should go for these 20 suspects, because I think 10 billion shillings, that was actually sponged off from the public coffers as far as, the Iran's billing is concerned.
That's right. They should all be arrested, prosecuted, and punished to a level that will be a deterrent even to those who are remotely considering corrupt practices. What you are seeing is the tip of the iceberg. I have every reason to believe that the greatest percentage has not been unearthed. It's still underwater. Still underwater. But this is a very encouraging step forward. With this step forward, hoping that the momentum will be sustained, I can say with confidence that we shall succeed in stopping corrupt practices in the country, if this is sustained. Why? President Uhuru Kenyatta has to leave a legacy.
Yes.
And a legacy is created when a leader addresses the worst problem or concern of the nation at that moment in time. We talk of Kennedy being great, yes, because at that moment in time, the Russians were ahead of America in space exploration. He did something and people got the moon, and that excited everybody in his nation and global. So he created a legacy. He sorted out an issue that was people's concern at that moment in time. And all people have left legacies, sorted out concerns of the masses in the countries they are leading at that moment in time. Today, it's corruption. If this approach will be sustained, then President Uhuru Kenyatta will leave a legacy. If he fails, man, history will judge him harshly, and it will not be amusing to those who support him. The legacy has to be created by sorting out a concern to the nation at that moment in time. Today is corruption. This is the tip of the iceberg. Let's be honest with it. Let's not politicize corruption. Let us not lie back and think that once you have prosecuted these people, then it's all done and gone. As Senator Poghisio said, it is a continuous process and has got to be taken with seriousness. This is a good beginning if it will be sustained.
All right, so maybe we throw you to the legislators as well. There is this, of course, notion that we should come up with a bill of the name and shame, right? So that now you actually go into the annals of history as a person who looted from the public, right? And you should not be appointed for any office within the land, maybe in perpetuity, because of the issue of corruption. If you cannot, have a capital punishment, we should jail you for life. Do you think we should broach that particular subject, even maybe in the President of Parliament? That why can't we come up with a bill like what the Romans really had? They shame you. You are a disgrace to the public. We have your faces splattered on the front pages of the dailies. You are a fixated, of course, media fixture. We look at you and we know this is a person who stole from the public, and there is that shame hanging over you. It's just like a millstone, hung on your neck.
I said...
Should we get such a legislation?
I said that this issue of things ending at the presidency is something we should not take lightly. Right now, for the next 4 years, unless something happens, a bill like that will pass through the parliament if the ruling coalition accepts it, because they have a major majority. If they don't want it, it won't pass. But that should be done and must be done. But what about the laws that are there, like recovery of assets? Are they being done?
Recovery of assets, yes, is a good question.
Are they being done?
But let's not get into the recovery of assets first. If that is the only prime solution, that it should go through Parliament, what other avenues then do we have? If we know we have the majority of numbers who will shoot down this particular bill because maybe of interested parties in Parliament, does it mean then we are tied? We cannot cut this particular Gordian knot?
We must cut it, and let me tell you,
if we don't, I want to know what is the other avenue.
If we don't, I would dare to say this, that it may reach a point that we may go out, maybe we people in opposition, and actually mobilize the people and come out and let people talk about corruption, force through street demonstration, that if these people who have been mentioned are not properly investigated.
We've seen a street demonstration so far. They've not yielded so much as far as reforms are concerned, right? And we had also that really affecting the economy. Could I ask maybe, if we have the executive order, what is the place of the executive order from the president? If you can invoke an executive order in light of coming with such a, not really a bill, because that is not really his function, but maybe coming with an authority, with an article, I don't know. Maybe you're the legislators, you can tell me, Senator Poghisio.
Yes, there is.
Can we have an executive order from the president straight on? That is, it doesn't have to pass through Parliament to kill the dead hand of bureaucracy, that we have an executive order from him in light of fighting corruption in this country, declaring it a national disaster.
I think the president has the leeway to use executive orders, but the best place to do is because he has a majority in the House.
Yeah.
He can actually initiate it and pass it if the will is there. That's why it's called political will. if the will is there, then it will pass through the normal channels. It's the same thing with budget. If we can do a budget.
But my question is, if it doesn't go through Parliament, what other options do we have? If we've exhausted Parliament, majority of numbers have shut it down, then what?
Yeah, but I'm saying basically, if we're talking about the same president today, and
Yes.
Kenya today, if he initiates any legislation, it will go through Parliament because the majority of the people who are going to vote are his. And then we have the handshake. And now with the handshake at the same time, if there is goodwill, there's a completely, any nice legislation can now go through. And I think we have the goodwill of the people in the Parliament. The only problem is we, like I said, go back to even the budget making process. Let it be devoid of political groupings. Let the budget be a national issue. So that we don't have to say we'll pass it just because it's our party. No. We do it because we want to see the details in those budgets, and let the public accounts and investments committees of the House be independent truly, and let them find the mistakes that are there in the budgets. Now the finance committees, those are the people who should be supported really to look at the budgets properly. The budget committees in the House, those are the people who should be supported to look at it properly. But I want to say this as I finish. This is an opportunity for President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is already beginning to show signs that he is fighting corruption. We need to encourage him to move on. We need to encourage him that he's on the right track. The changes he's making in government, the readiness to work with the private sector right now will help him. Readiness to work with legislators to fight corruption. That's what I mean by conversation. I mean he should be ready to work, get information from senior people who have got experiences in government. Let him consult as widely as he can, and we are ready to support him because he is already on the right track, in my view.
All right, and thank you. Let's hear from Dr. Eseli also, acting as a parting shot.
Where Dr. Nyikal comes from, they say that fish rots from the head. And in this case, I agree with Honorable Mwakwere. The head includes Parliament. So Parliament is part and parcel of the rot. You'll find, you see, we can't really fight corruption if we don't fight tribalism. Because even now, as we are talking about corruption, the appointments that are going on are still tribally imbalanced. Even as we speak.
Yes.
So, and if we really want to fight corruption, we must fight both of them with the tribalism that accompanies it. If you look at Park and Pick in Parliament, they have recommended many people never to hold public office, but it just goes. Nothing happens. I think it's a terrible solution. If the president and the rest of us don't stand up and fight corruption, then there's a terrible, terrible solution, which I hope we don't get to it. A hit squad. A hit squad. You are corrupt, you're not being jailed, nothing is happening to you, pop, we hit you. Perhaps that can scare some cases, but that's a terrible solution. I don't want us together. I don't want us to get
that will also be a spawning ground for
that would be illegal.
Rights activists really,
that would be an illegal way of ending an illegality.
All right, let us hear from Mwakwere, your parting shots as well this morning.
My parting shots touch on the economy again. Whatever is happening is an indication that our economy is failing. At the time when our economy was doing well, there were corrupt practices, definitely, but not at the magnitude that is being exposed now. When you look at our GDP growth rates, deplorable. You look at unemployment, shocking. You look at inflation, my goodness, nothing to write home about. When you look at the interest rates that have been paid, unbearable. You look at the balance of trade for the country, in the negative, in billions. When you look at the government debt, it's approaching 60% of our GDP.
Yes.
It's the economy. We're at our worst stage now. Unless we jumpstart the economy, there will be the tip of the iceberg that we're discovering, but the bigger part will continue. It's submerged. And the country will run towards being a failed state. When it becomes a failed state, what Dr. Eseli has said surfaces. There are examples in the world. So this has got to be sustained in support of what Senator Poghisio said.
Thank you.
This has got to be done mercilessly, as Dr. Kala said,
Thank you.
and I fully support that.
Thank you.
But the economy.
Briefly.
Let me close. Unless tribalism and corruption are controlled, the big four for our development will become the big pillars of corruption. There's no way around it. Without controlling corruption and tribalism, the big four will become pillars of just corruption.
Right, thank you.